But there was also another story that caught my eye, and Steve Kerr, the coach of the Golden State Warriors, was asked about the Anthony Davis demanding a trade with a year and a half left on a contract that he signed. And I guess they, talked about whether or not it was a good or bad thing for the league. And he said it was bad. And Rob G has the exact quote from Steve Kerr on this.
That's right. It was Steve Kerr talking on the Warriors Insider podcast. He said, quote, "It's a real problem that the league has to address and the players have to be careful with. When you sign on that dotted line, you owe your effort and your play to the team, to the city, to the fans. And then once that contract runs out, it's completely within your rights to leave as a free agent. But if you sign the contract, you should be bound to that contract. If you come to an agreement with the team that, hey, it's probably best for us to part ways, that's one thing. But the Anthony Davis stuff was really groundbreaking and hopefully not a trend because it's bad for the league," end quote.
100% correct. Steve Kerr is probably the straightest shooter in the NBA. I'm dead serious. I'm talking about whenever there's some sort of controversy or something going on, he takes everything head on. He's a realist. He's honest.
Except when KD got hurt.
Then
he ducked. But
what's saying that he didn't think that he could get hurt?
No, remember it was something about they said should he have played? He said, well, I can't answer. That's Bob Myers and the doctors and
no, that was all right.
Yeah.
That one he did size.
Yeah, just that one.
But you know what I mean. But normally he's out front and he's honest, and people can say, well, players get dumped and traded all the time. How come the players can't take their own careers in their own hands? Because there's a league, and there's competitive balance, and there's stuff that if you're going to, in the last part of your contract, say when Carmelo Anthony was with the Nuggets, and he goes, okay, my contract's up in 4 months. I'm not re-signing with you. If you guys want to trade me to try to get something for me, I'm telling you, I'm not re-signing. That's different.
Sure.
Thank you for giving us a heads up. You're not going to negotiate with us. We should do something else. I get that. He had a year and a half left on a contract. All right? And when you do stuff like this is what people don't understand. The reason there's a draft, the reason that you sign a deal for years and it's binding is so that you can have some sort of consistency. If it's just like everybody should get to go do whatever they want, then we don't even need a draft. Well, you should be able to come out of college, come out of UConn.
Great school.
Which, except for the basketball scandals, but come out of UConn.
How dare you talk about Gino Auriemma?
I'm just out there. I want to talk about Gino Auriemma. And you should come out, take your resume and your reel and say, hey, I played at UConn. I grew up as a Knicks fan, or I grew up as a Celtics fan. I want to play for the Celtics. It's only because of the collective bargaining that you have to go wherever they tell you to go.
Of course.
And my only point is, it's not good because if you're New Orleans, is this going to happen to you in 4 years with Zion? Are you going to go through this where there are cities and teams that people don't want to play for that will have this happen to them time and time again because people are talked out of it? Michael Jordan went to the Chicago Bulls. I got news for you. The Bulls were awful, terrible. They hadn't won jack, nothing. They were the laughables. That's how bad they were. Did he go, I don't want to Chicago. I don't want to play for that sad sack organization. I only want to go to the Lakers or the Knicks or whatever it was back then. He played it out. He played with the players that were there, and he wound up turning it into a juggernaut, a dynasty, winning 6 championships, not losing. Everybody doesn't have to do that. I'm not saying I'm against free agency and people moving.
And neither is Steve Kerr. He said that in the
statement.
Right.
I'm not. I am bothered by what Anthony Davis did with a year and a half left. If he gave them the high sign and said, hey, contract's up in 3 or 4 months, I'm not going to re-sign. If you want to move me, I understand it. That's fair. But to do that and put pressure and force an organization to have to trade you, and I blame New Orleans. If I was a GM or the ownership, I would have never traded with the Lakers. You would have had to go to the Lakers somewhere else. And remember, Green Bay did the same exact thing to Brett Favre. Where did he originally want to go? Do you remember?
Don't remember.
Minnesota.
Okay.
In the division. He wanted to go to Minnesota. And they said, no way, no how are we sending you to Minnesota. Where'd they send him? To the AFC to play with the Jets. And then he went on his own to the Vikings the next year. Same thing with Kawhi Leonard. Oh, the Spurs should just trade him to the Lakers. That's where he wants to go and all that. No. Where'd they trade him? To NBA Siberia. And I just mean it because it's cold and
Do you have
Toronto.
a problem with Drake like Chris does?
No,
or?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Chris went after Drake, too.
They sent him all the way to Toronto because they weren't going to give him to the Lakers. They weren't going to put Kawhi in a situation. And why reward a guy who's dumping on you or leaving you in the lurch? I would never do that. I would take a lesser trade to not give him exactly what he wants if he's done me wrong. And that's the only thing that I agree with Steve Kerr.
Well, and to bring it to another story today, I think that's what's so scary about the Paul George situation, because what the Paul George situation said to me, and I think Anthony Davis was bad enough 1.5 years, like you said. The Paul George situation with 2 years left on his contract, a year after he signed it, the Thunder made the playoffs. When a guy like that is demanding a trade, that's terrifying to me if I'm an owner, if I'm a GM, if I'm a coach, if I'm a role player. Because what that says is everyone is a free agent at every time. And it's just a matter of whether they're going to cash in that chip or not. That, to me, I think it's terrifying what Paul George did. And by the way, I'm with Steve Kerr 100%. Anthony Davis signed a 5-year, $145 million contract.
That he signed. It wasn't like he was forced to.
But when you sign that contract, it comes with responsibility. They don't just hand you a check for $30 million a year without any responsibility. You got to be the face of the franchise. You got to be the leader. You got to be there when things go bad. I was thinking about this today, Rob. Imagine if, a couple weeks ago I got married. Imagine if...
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Well, imagine if first time I got in a fight with my now wife, I just said, yeah, it's not really going well. It's not going well. I'm just gonna go over there now. Like, no, it doesn't.
Wait a minute. Did you have tapes of my marriage? Or no?
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, so you're the Anthony Davis of marriage, the first sign of adversity.
No.
The other way.
We were married for 5 years.
But that's what I'm saying. Well, longer than Anthony Davis
I know.
signed that. But that's what I'm saying. When you sign a contract, there are obligations, and you don't just get to leave because the team isn't good or it's not going the way you thought.
But the thing that's crazy is they were actually good. They had swept.
That's what I'm saying.
Portland the year before in the playoffs.
Yep.
And they were moved. They had a squad. They had a team which came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he didn't want to be in New Orleans, which I always think has to do with LeBron and Clutch Sports and those guys working behind the scenes to try to help LeBron. It's always about LeBron, not about Anthony Davis's career.
I agree. But to get back to the Steve Kerr comments, I just think it is such a bad precedent for these players. So I'd have thought today, Rob, tell me if this is crazy, is if you publicly demand a trade, this is my thought, right? All these guys, they want to get traded. They want to go where they want their check. That's my problem. You're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a week, tens of millions of dollars a year. Anthony Davis didn't even play this year. This is my thought. You publicly demand a trade. You automatically become deactivated and you don't get paid.
No, you can't. That'll be against the union.
Well, the players' union wouldn't go for it. But my point is this, is you can't just... It's bad enough when you are a guy that the team is counting on, you demand a trade, but you still expect to sit there and get paid. That's not how the real world works.
I agree with that, but it'd be hard to do that.
I'm just saying.
No, and I get it. My thing is, I just wouldn't automatically trade somebody because.
I agree.
And the hard part is, and I do believe in this, I don't want somebody who doesn't want to be around. Like you see situations where guys, they're like, the girl wants out of the relationship, but the guy won't let it go.
Sure.
I don't want to be with. If she doesn't want to be with me, why would you want to try to make her stick around? Does that make any sense?
Of course, yeah, but it's also, to go back to the marriage analogy, like at a certain point, you got to fight through stuff. You got to fight through adversity, and that's my issue with Anthony Davis. Like you said, they made the playoffs last season. He's the face of the franchise. He's supposed to be the reason. Paul George, you just made the playoffs in OKC, and now you want out 6 months later?
The only thing is, I look at the Paul George a little different. I really do, from the standpoint that he wasn't the OKC face of the franchise, even though they'd signed him, and I agree with that. And he's an older player, and he got an opportunity to go home and play. And now, if he went to me, if he wanted out and went to what y'all would consider a lateral move, if he didn't have any ties to the Lakers or Los Angeles, there's a little bit more to that in that he left Indiana. And then I applauded him when he stayed at OKC. You remember he had a chance to come to the Lakers, and he didn't do it. And then he got into this situation where this is presented to him. And I understand your point is well taken. I look at Anthony Davis differently because Anthony was the face. Anthony was the face of that franchise. They drafted him. He was supposed to turn the franchise around. Paul George was a player who came from somewhere else.
My bigger problem with Paul George, though, is you could say he was the number 2 guy, Westbrook's the face of the franchise. The whole organization, as soon he was the pin, you pull the pin out, and the everything deflates. The whole organization falls apart. He's not the face of the franchise, but you have to trade Russell Westbrook at that point. You have to start over. Billy Donovan's not going to be back after this year. That's my problem with Paul George. You can say he's not the face of the franchise. It's still completely altered the entire organization.
Yeah, but they were the ones who decided to get rid of Russell Westbrook after that. I mean,
you can't keep rebuilding. He's 30 years old.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, they decided to pull the plug on the whole thing, and hopefully people there got refunds and on season tickets, because I would be like, this is not what I paid for.
You don't want to pay to see Chris Paul?
No.
I don't want to watch Chris Paul.
It's unbelievable, like where that is and where that franchise is, and people are like, oh, they should buy him out and he'll go to the Lakers. You're going to buy out $156 million or whatever it is that's left on that deal?
No, of course not.
Not close.
No way, no how.
No way, no. You know it. That ain't going to happen. So I'm with Steve Kerr. I thought the AD thing sets a bad precedent, and I think that if I'm New Orleans, I'm already, is Zion going to be poisoned after a year or two when people say, hey, look what happened to you, Zion. If you would have gone to the Knicks, that Jordan deal would have been $100 million. You went to New Orleans, it was only $75 million. You don't think that plays in his head that he's losing money by being there? Because that's the perfect example. Don't you think he would have made more money if he was on the Knicks?
I think he got basically the biggest rookie contract ever for a shoe deal.
By a couple of shekels. I'm not buying that. You really believe that?
I think he would have gotten more for the Knicks.
Would he have gotten? Well, that's my point. So why should you play in a town where you're making less to do the same thing?
So you're saying this is the end of small markets as we know it?
I don't. If people keep doing this, if this is the way we go, this is something that's going to have to be changed. And what I think that if I'm the commissioner, the only way you can do it is either limit how many max or star contracts you can take. Like you have to classify guys into groups, and you can only have 2, what I would call A classification. You would be deemed 1 A, B, C, and D contracts, and you can only have 2. So the whole thing of LeBron, AD, and them trying to get Kawhi would have never been able to go because they already had 2 A deals.
What if you
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what if you draft really well like the Warriors and you want to keep Steph, Clay, and Draymond?
Your own players are different, and that's because that's the way they pay. I'm talking about when you add players who were not drafted.
Okay.
Because that's how they even grandfather it in. You could pay the teams that draft players can pay them more than if you go move. Every time Kawhi Leonard has moved, he lost $40 million going from the Spurs to Toronto. Then going from Toronto to the Clippers, he lost $50 million. He lost $90 million because he made those 2 moves. So they penalize you. He would be making $90 million more if he would have stayed with the Spurs. So I think they have to do something like that.
Hey, it's the Odd Couple. I'm Chris. He is Rob, and we want to encourage all of you to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That's right. You can listen to us on the radio, and now you can watch us as well, and it's fun.
No question about it. And remember, oh yeah!